in
Okay.
between these trees, there's 15 feet between this sugar apple and this sugar apple. So we incorporated, a decent size plant here in the middle to fill that space even more. Because in the long term, you do not want to have to bring in mulch for your system. You may have to do that in the beginning, but you should be planting things that are going to produce mulch for you and, produce mulch from the nutrients that are being accumulated in your soil.
Ladies and gentlemen, grab your gloves and get your compost ready. Stepping into the ring is the perennial powerhouse, the sultan of soil, the beast of the beds, where permaculture reigns, food grows wild, community roots run deep, and yes, the garden punks hit hard. Freedom starts in the soil. This is the Guerrilla Gardening Show.
Welcome back to the Guerrilla Gardening Show. I'm Mike with Mike's in the Garden, back with Sam from Central Florida Abundance. What's going on, Sam?
What's going on, Mike? What's going on, y'all? It's a cold one out today. It's gonna be cold this weekend, so make sure y'all check out our last episode if you had some damage on your plants and a few previous episodes before that, because you still do have some time to prepare maybe before the next cold snap.
Correct. Yeah, so get watching.
Yeah, but we got a cool one today about a project that I worked on about 2 years ago now, and I've been there on and off. It was a project from a friend of mine, Pablo. Y'all may have heard of him,
Shout outs
but
to Pablo from Eco Hustle. Depending on when this episode comes out, his episode most likely will already be out, so you
that's
can
what I was wondering. Yeah,
check that
y'all
out.
know him from the vermicompost episode. You can check
Yeah,
that out too. We got all the plugs right now.
that's it.
But this is the Polk County Farmers Market. Can you see this?
Yeah,
And it's a awesome idea for a farm. It's really just a small farm with a produce stand and a nursery. Um, they do grow a lot of crops out here. Um, they're in Central Florida in Polk County, if you get from the name. So it's subtropical climate. It's the climate that I grow mostly in, and you can see the substrate in this photo. It's very sandy soils,
yeah.
but they are able to produce a lot. And up until the point we started working with them, they were using conventional methods. They were tilling, they were fertilizing, but interestingly enough, they have fruit trees and they would plant seasonal vegetables in between the rows of these fruit trees. And, you know, beyond that, they would still till uh, and they would, add synthetic fertilizers. But even having the, you know, protection, wind protection, sun protection from these fruit trees did help them. And you can almost see, I guess there aren't trees around these. Oh, this is the next picture. But there's some kale that they were growing down in here.
Yeah.
And so, that was traditionally all through these. But when we started working with them, Pablo and I uh, met them and really liked what they were doing and what they were trying to do, but we saw their struggles. Um, it was a lot of input cost to grow these vegetables, and they were having to spend that money every single year. And I mean, me and Pablo have worked in this regenerative field for a long time. So seeing an opportunity and an operation like this, we really wanted to help them succeed. And so we really pushed them to uh, adapt some syntropic methods um, to try to get away from, all the inputs and the machine work, and integrate some more diverse plantings, some more diverse perennial plantings around their trees, um, and use that to build healthier soil, and then use that healthy soil in the center of those trees to grow their annual crops for their farmers market. So it would, increase their labor a bit, their manual labor, because you can't do all that with a tractor. Uh, but it would greatly increase, the amount of profit they're making versus how much they're having to spend to produce it. So they didn't really want us messing with this area in the front here. This is where their established trees. This is where they grew all of their, main harvest crops. So they gave us this area in the back. And you can
Yeah,
almost, here you go.
real
Yeah.
quick. What what is a syntropic row, syntropic method?
Okay. Well, we'll get into it. I mean, this
Okay,
whole will kind of show how we put it together.
okay.
But essentially, a syntropic system is a system that feeds itself. Uh, Syntropy is when lots of diverse aspects are moving independently, but push a system towards a coherent, cohesive whole. And so, you know, to grow maybe 10 different crops. We're going to have maybe, 100 different species of plants in here, all working towards building a healthy system. You know, um, when we're talking about syntropic agriculture, when we're talking about regenerative agriculture, the main focus is building healthy soils, healthy systems, healthy ecosystems to, you know, home this area where we're going to plant productive things. The majority of the work we're doing is to take care of the area, take care of, all aspects of it. And then a small byproduct of that is that we can get some harvest and some, production out of that. So really right now, the focus of this system is just production, and all of the energy is being put into forcing the plants to produce as much as they possibly can, uh, and no real energy is being put into taking care of, this entire system as a whole. Um, so, and does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Yeah, if anybody out there is familiar with Oak Farms in Orlando, Florida, that's a really good example of syntropic agroforestry for produce farming. You know, using quick succession plants to build soil quickly and utilize on the full sun that's available early on to grow annual crops in between those long-term trees. And so, that's kind of what they're trying to do here. Um, and in the long term, if you're planting trees in your biomass beds, your long-term beds, um, eventually it's going to be too shady to grow annual produce. And I mean, that's 10 years down the road. And if you really wanted to open up more sun at that point, you could just cut down a tree. So, not really a problem, just something to be aware of. But right here in this picture, you can see these sticks, right?
yeah.
Every 15 or so feet. And those are sugar apples.
Okay.
And so they were trying to do the same thing they did up front with the trees, and then they were eventually going to grow crops in between the, you know, uh, in this area between this row and then here. there's another row of sugar apples. I think that might be one, and that's one.
Yeah.
So there's like 30 feet in between these rows, and then 15 feet in between these trees along these rows. And in the wide space, that's where they would grow their crops, their annual crops, while these sugar apples, take time to mature, and then eventually become productive seasonally. Um, but what we wanted to do was help them create a system that's going to feed the sugar apples long term, feed the soil in the middle, and just take a lot of I mean, all of the unnecessary added inputs out of the system. So we approached them with a plan and we kind of did the whole system pro bono. Um, and we worked out a design. Obviously, these drone photos are from early on. I was kind of mapping out where everything was, but what we're about to get into, and you can see there's a lot of established things you can see these bananas here. Keep
Okay.
track of that because that's going to be a reference point. I
Yeah.
think this next photo will get, oh yeah, so we'll go around the farm actually first. So you
Okay.
can see kind of their nursery operation.
Wow.
I mean, it's on a busy place. Uh, but I mean, they're mostly focusing on, you know, tilling the soil to eliminate weeds. That's how I remember they told us they didn't own a lawnmower. They just had the tiller. Uh, so, if there was grass somewhere they didn't want it, they would till it. And so this photo is our soon to be syntropic rows. You can see our sugar apples here and here. I think there might be more rows of them. And then we've got the bananas on one side. This is going to go away before we start our actual project. Let's just skip around these. I got all sorts of stuff. But here we go. So uh this was day one
Okay.
and
What are you
it
spreading this
became
around with? Like a skid steer?
no, so this was before we got there, and they
Okay.
decided that they were gonna till around the
Okay.
trees,
Okay.
yeah, to clear the grass. Because this is when I found out they didn't have a lawnmower, because I asked them to mow around the trees,
Okay.
to help us out a little bit.
And so how does
Um,
this negatively or positively affect what you're about to do?
Definitely negatively.
Okay.
The I don't know. I mean, it was very interesting because they'd been tilling for so long. Their soils are very bad. And, not only are they tilling that's causing issues, but driving the tractor all over the fields all the time compacts the soil a lot. Uh, and then this area gets a lot of rainfall. So that rain, if the soil's tilled when it rains, that's going to compact it even more. But then on top of that, the compacted soils and the lack of diverse plants, the rain's just going to wash off. So they get terrible floods out here. But it also is dry as a bone.
Hmm. I'm surprised the bananas look as good as they do.
Yeah, and they do, I mean, they fertilize them. They fertilize the heck
Okay.
out of them. Um, we planted some pups out of those, and they were had tons of like borers through the corms. I mean, it was a pretty sick. We had to bring in bananas to plant out here in these rows, which I
Okay.
thought certainly we'd be able to take some pups out of these clumps, but none of them were viable.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, you know. You expect those kinds of things. In a conventional system, you're gonna have overpopulations of pest insects that are gonna require herbicides. And if you can't afford the herbicides, those pests are just going to, you know, overthrow your plants. Because there's no there's no real checks and balances in the system. So it would have been ideal if they hadn't tilled, but it probably wouldn't have made a whole lot of difference in the long term because they'd been tilling for so long. Um, I think what it may have done is damage these trees a little bit because in the long term, the sugar apples have not done so well,
Okay.
which is almost to be expected when you're building a system. This photo does give me a good opportunity to discuss how the system will be laid out.
Sure.
So you've got your uh, long-term crop trees, your long-term tree crops, which are the sugar apples. You could also do mangoes, avocados, um, you know, soursop. Depending on your climate, there's a lot of different things you could do. But, they're going to take a while to produce, and they're not going to produce all year. So in between them, that's where you're going to have annual alley crops, while these trees are small until you get to a point where you just can't grow in the middle. But then around these trees, in this area that's tilled, and the reason they tilled it because we told them that we were going to be planting biomass beds around these trees. And the biomass beds are plants that are strictly meant to be cut and then returned to the soil. So, all your chop and drop species, whatever is amenable to the climate and, to your ability to keep them under control. But all of that is mulched around the trees initially to feed the trees and to feed the biomass plants. But then once those areas are established, all that biomass can be accumulated in between the rows. Um, so what we told them what we were going to do, we were going to build these biomass beds around their trees. Ideally, you would build the beds first and then plant the trees once
Mhm.
the biomass plants are established. Um, you always want to put your support plants in first. Don't plant your fruit trees first. That's like the number one mistake that I see. I mean, everybody's gonna make. It's the hard choice, but it is the best choice in the long term. So we can skip over some of these videos because it's all just this tilled site, you know. Um, it is kind of incredible because we're gonna get this was 2 years ago that we really started working out here. Um, and it's all been, I mean, just kind of volunteer effort. There's been several groups of people that have come out here and done work since the beginning, but this was the first. This was the first day of real work going into here. And you can see the first thing we're doing is mulching. They gave us all that bare soil, and it is nice that there's no existing plants, kind of. Um, so, the first thing to do was just to cover it all. Um, and we did work with, what amount of mulch we had at the time, because this was yeah, a very low budget project. Let's see if I can get one of these in frame in this. There we go. So we've got our sugar apple here, and you can see we've built, a mulched ring around it. It's not a donut. It's really level,
Okay.
because this site's so low. It really is ideal that you just let the water disperse evenly. You don't want it to pool up anywhere. Um, but this was the first step of the mulch we had, just getting the soil around these trees covered. And then directly around the trees, we started planting our first biomass plants. And most biomass plants are great because they're easily propagatable. They're usually either really fast growing from seed or easily grown from stem cuttings. And so the plants, I mean, you won't see them in this video,
Yeah.
but the plants that we put in, there's Mexican sunflower cuttings in there, there's cassava cuttings, there's pigeon pea seeds, there's moringa seeds, and then there's southern cowpea seeds. And, that's kind of our height, our ground cover, our really tall height, like our moringas, we can let them get up high over the sugar apples and shade them even. But oh, there we go. So here you can see some of the cuttings,
Yeah.
and you can see they're along the edges of the bed mostly. We also we had some bunching grasses. We had Napier grass and some even vetiver grass that was generously donated by Pablo and some of his other friends out of their, personal gardens, just dug some clumps up. Um, and we were able to, put them out here. And you can see here, this was a banana that we put in. This was one of the pups.
Hmm.
None of them took. More were put in afterwards, but in
Okay.
between these trees, there's 15 feet between this sugar apple and this sugar apple. So we incorporated, a decent size plant here in the middle to fill that space even more. Because in the long term, you do not want to have to bring in mulch for your system. You may have to do that in the beginning, but you should be planting things that are going to produce mulch for you and, produce mulch from the nutrients that are being accumulated in your soil. And so, right now, this is the mulch that is available. And so, most of the plants we are planting are things that are going to provide more mulch later on.
Okay.
And that's really where the work comes in,
Right.
is turning those plants into mulch. And it is sad. Most of these sugar apples are pretty rough right now, but I don't necessarily think it's anything other than, I mean, the soil is just really rough. Uh, I remember we were also told that these trees were planted lower. Like,
Too
if
deep in
I
the
think,
ground?
yeah, I think the way they were planted was, their soil, when you dug into it, was extremely dry and sandy. And so they were recommended by somebody to, years ago, maybe when they were much younger. It's an older couple now, so, they have their ways. But they were recommended in dry, sandy soils, plant your trees deep so that, any moisture there is gets sucked up, which is not a good recommendation. Don't do that. You can plant your trees in a basin, but the soil level needs to stay where it was in the pot, no matter what. Uh, but what kind of doubly impacted this was, I mean, it's not a dry site, it's a flooded area. I mean, there should be water reservoirs out here with how much rainfall they get,
Hmm.
but, you know, it all runs off. But that still causes the plants to sit in that water, and, they're just not really meant for that. Some things could be. And once the soil gets better, it's going to absorb that water much quickly, and this area shouldn't flood as much. So this was the end of the first day, and you can see, this we worked on this row specifically. I mean, this was 6 hours of work, getting
Wow.
everything here in the ground. I mean, I think there was five of us.
Wow.
Um, and you know, at the end of that day, the homeowners were like, "All right, we're gonna see how it goes." Um, and I can definitely say they were not prepared for how much extra work it was gonna be to keep the system, well maintained. So we'll get into the last video here, and this is a video that I just had Pablo send me tonight. He was
Great.
out there like a month ago. Yeah. And you see the Napier grass. Oh man, that's one that you don't plant Napier grass unless you're going to maintain it. And you know,
And we're
this
gonna see
was
why.
yeah, you're gonna see why. But it's very easy to bring it all back. All it
Right.
takes is one, good chop and drop. And they have chopped this. Pablo's actually gone out there personally and chopped it 2 or 3 times in the past 2 years. But I mean, once a year is not enough for a
Yeah.
chop and drop. For a system like this, once a month. You have to go out there once a month and chop everything down, all your biomass. But you can see the Mexican sunflower. I mean, obviously, this has gone through several chops already.
Yeah.
All that biomass down in the middle there, that soil is covered. There's pigeon peas. I wonder if we'll see a sugar apple. Usually he tries to avoid them. But yeah, there are, volunteer plants that have grown in here, but they're not really problematic. At this point, we could plant new trees. You can see, the new bananas we've planted. Not in that shot. They've actually done pretty well. There's no way he gets into the soil from all. Look at all that coverage. But yeah, there's a banana right there.
All right.
And
I'm
I
still
mean,
seeing, I think I'm still seeing the old photo.
the old photo, you're not watching this video?
No, I'm not watching a video.
Dang. Okay. You didn't see the video at all?
No. When you were talking
Oh,
about the sunflower and the pigeon pea, um, I thought we were still looking at that photo. So, okay.
this is the
All
so
right.
this is
I
why
see.
you don't plant
Yeah.
Napier grass if you're not going to take care of it. But
Yeah.
again, this has gone through several chops. Needs to be once a month. It kind of turns into once a year chopping.
Yeah. That's the Mexican sunflower. Well, okay.
Here.
Yeah.
That's the Mexican sunflower. That
Yeah.
blurry green blob right there. Uh, and I mean, that's been chopped several times, and that's why it's so short and bushy. This was probably like 6 months after a chop.
Well,
But yeah, I mean, this was, you know, before standing in this spot, you'd be able to see clear across to the
yeah.
other side of the farm. And now, there's these huge windbreaks here. The soil's incredibly covered. Pablo's in shade right now in the middle of the row.
Yeah.
And this is what, a syntropic system. This is, albeit an unmanaged one, but, these are lots of diverse aspects working together. You can see this banana never fertilized. It does not get, I mean, we're not going to talk about irrigation because this place floods, so it gets tons of water.
Right.
But I mean, it's maybe been in the ground a year from a pup, like a small dug pup. And I mean, you're trying with bananas. They don't just grow on their own.
Sure.
Um, and so there's a lot of fertility that's been incorporated into this system now. And what really needs to be done is, it needs to be put on a more strict management plan, and then they need to plant the next succession of their long-term tree crops.
So I know you
So
said it's an older couple. Do they not have like an employee or someone that does maintenance for them?
they do have several people that do that.
Okay.
And
They're just not doing it.
yes,
Okay.
basically. And I mean, it's an interesting situation. It always is.
Sure.
The whole world could be farms like this if, you know, the perfect situations existed everywhere.
Yeah. Well, it takes
Um,
effort. So if you're
exactly.
not
It takes a
willing
lot of
to put
work.
the effort in, then this is what will happen.
Yeah, and I mean, really, their skill sets, because they've been farming for probably 30 or 40 years,
Right.
and the whole time has been tractors,
Right.
tilling, and spraying. And so that's what they know,
Right.
so telling them they need to get a lawnmower and a weed eater and a machete to farm, they're like,
Yeah.
that doesn't click.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they want it, but they are older, and so they have to depend on their laborers who, you know, I mean, we gave some classes to them, we did a chop and drop with them, but I mean, just not everybody is uh is really into hard work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, when I have people do this hard work for me, I pay them accordingly. And I can say that most places don't pay their field laborers, that well. $15 an hour is hardly enough to, get paid to go out here and chop through this stuff once a month.
Sure.
Uh, for a teenager, maybe. If you got
Yeah.
young kids, it's a
Yeah.
perfect
They
system.
need some grandkids out there.
Yeah, that's really what it is. They don't have grandkids. Their children are like in their 40s and 50s. And
Okay.
so like, they're not getting out there. Their back's already hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's still ongoing. And I mean, when we started this, we told them, this is a 5-year project, especially with a $0 budget.
Right.
We start now. The plan is, 5 years from now, we're going to have something that is healthy and productive. Um, and that can be sped up or slowed down depending on frequency of management. Um, but it can't be stopped. No matter what, the soil, if this is allowed to stay and isn't tilled, and just turned back to what it was, the soils here are going to become exponentially better. And they've already recognized the improvements. The drainage in this area has become a lot better. They're not getting as much flooding around these rows. And so they're really just trying to work out a plan that, makes it reasonable to keep them manageable. Um, and if anybody out there just wants to volunteer their time, drop a comment down below. Maybe I'll set you up. We'll get you some volunteer hours out at the Polk County Farmers Market.
Yeah.
And always
Nice.
stop by if you're in the Polk County area, you can look them up, go support their business, buy some produce. They'll say they sell teas, herbal, from their guava trees and their loquat trees. You
Okay.
can buy fresh avocados, depending on what's in season, bananas. They crack you open a coconut, with a machete, give you coconut water. Um, and yeah, go support them. Let them know that you're looking out and you believe in what they're trying to do.
Nice. Well, very interesting. Hopefully, give some people ideas and some food for thought. Sam, tell everybody where they can find more of you and your services.
Yeah, if you want to check out more projects or get set up with a consultation, you can check out Central Florida Abundance on Instagram, Facebook, and right here on YouTube. And you can check out the iGo Family Farm if you're watching this before March and you want to get signed up for our spring CSA. Looking forward to hearing from y'all.
Excellent. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe to Mike's in the Garden here on YouTube and the Instagrams and all the other stuff. And get yourself a shirt to support the Guerrilla Gardening Show. You're going to be seeing a whole bunch of shirts come across the screen now, so you can be a lucky one and get one of those. So, Sam, great episode. We'll catch you again.